And the recording has begun. So, as I said, we are here to cover OneNote Class Notebook. We appreciate there's a lot of people that are trying to cope at the moment with distance learning. And what we wanted to do is put on a really short, small, concise session where we explored how to get started with OneNote Class Notebook, look at how it can be used for distance learning, and try and help everybody that's on the session to get the most from it and take it back to your school or organisation. And whether you've already started using it and you just want to find out a little bit more, or whether you're here today because you've never used it before, it's absolutely fine. We will go through and just take a look at how it all fits together. The webinar is one of a series of webinars that Turn It On putting on for distance learning. So there's another one tomorrow and there will be 3 more next week. We focused primarily around the tools for distance learning, which quite a few are sections of Teams, but also other parts such as OneNote today. We are today going to give you the opportunity to become a Microsoft educator expert, and that will enable you to become accredited to show that you've studied today's session, you've joined us on this webinar, and at the end of the session I will give you a code that you can redeem in the Microsoft Education Center. The Microsoft Education Center, if you pop it into a search engine and search exactly those terms, it will come up. It will look something like the screenshot I have on the right hand side, and where the fingers are pointing in the top right hand corner, you can sign in if you already have a Microsoft Education Center account. If you don't worry about it. You can create one and redeem the code, and then that will automatically give you 1,000 points and make you a certified MIE, a Microsoft Innovator Expert, and that will then hopefully start you on a journey through. And a lot of schools that start individual staff studying MIE and looking at the courses that are available end up with then people wanting to take it further. Not everybody, but you can become an MIE expert, and some people even lead on to showcase schools. You also have the opportunity to branch out and become a trainer and start to work with other schools in the UK or lead improvement in your area. As far as the session this afternoon, we in OneNote Class Notebook are going to focus very much on that distance learning element, but we'll also consider how it can be used for day-to-day teaching when we get back into the classroom. We'll also then examine how to make those digital notebooks, organise the resources to get them out to pupils and students, how that can foster communication and collaboration, and it allows people to work together even though they aren't with each other. I will pause after small chunks to take questions. Those questions you can just speak to me and you can unmute your microphone, or you can place them into the chat, and periodically I'll go back and check the chat and I'll pick up any questions that are there. My background is teaching and learning. I was a teacher before coming to join Turn It On, and I've worked across most educational phases, so I'm more than happy to field questions in relation to OneNote Class Notebook. OneNote Class Notebook goes hand in hand with Teams, and in your school you may have already started setting up class teams where you've enrolled staff and pupils in order to get them together for distance learning. And a key aspect of Teams is OneNote Class Notebook. It is the go-to tool for day-to-day teaching, and you'd be pretty lost without it, or you're trying to compensate for it, and it makes life difficult, so you may as well embrace it. You only get OneNote Class Notebook in a class team. It's not available in any of the other types of teams that you can create in Microsoft Teams. So we are going to focus on class teams today in this session because that's where you find OneNote Class Notebook. I'm just going to jump out of the presentation and swap over to share with you the screen that I'm logged into. While I'm moving over, does anybody have any urgent questions from the opening part of the presentation? No? Okay. Once you are in your Office 365, you can log into Teams through the app that you might have installed on your computer. You can get the Teams app for Windows, you can get it for Mac OS on Apple computers. It will also work on Chromebooks and Linux if you decide to use Linux. There's an app additionally for mobile phones and tablet devices, so most tablets that run Android will be able to get the Teams app, and additionally any Apple devices such as an iPhone or an iPad can have it installed too. But it works really happily in a web browser, and there's no problem with using it in a web browser. There's no detraction of features. It's the same whichever way you want to go about it. So you may end up landing somewhere like this, a landing page. You might be in your Outlook. Into Get Teams, if you haven't used it in a web browser before, you would click the app launcher in the top left hand corner and then click on the Teams app, and that will open it another window. If you are somebody using it as an app, you don't need to do that. You just open up the app and away you go. So in here today, I've got a few demo examples of teams, and I'm going to focus on using a primary team. Whether you're using a primary class team or a secondary class team, or whether you're in an SEN school, or whether you've come here from HE or FE, it will all work in the same way with a OneNote class notebook. It's just the context of the content that will be slightly different. Where you find OneNote class notebook is up here at the top. So moving across, the last session we looked at in these bite-sized webinars were posts. So today we're going to focus on OneNote class notebook. If we click it at the top, it will then drop you in and show you the OneNote class notebook for your class team. Now, if you've been using it previously, it will display some content. But if you haven't been using it before, you may not have the view that I'm displaying here. Never fear, we can cover that for you. If we jump quickly back out and I'm going to a demo example of a class team, the very first time that you arrive and you come to use OneNote class notebook, if you're doing this for the first time or you're setting up some class teams for your school, you'll get presented with this screen. You need to press Set Up OneNote class notebook and select blank notebook, and then it will take you through a setup wizard, and it will ask you to create different sections in your OneNote, and it will ask you to name those sections. So by default, OneNote class notebook will offer you some sections called handout, class notes, quizzes, and okay, they're vaguely appropriate to different educational phases, but I'd urge you to go through and change the names of those and make them relevant for the year group that you're teaching or the cohort of pupils and students you're working with. The setup wizard will only run once, and it's worth just thinking what you'd like as the section names before you press the final button and commit. Otherwise, if you want to make any additional sections, you have to go in and add them one by one. I'll jump back over to the primary class team and into OneNote class notebook. Once you get to OneNote class notebook, the best way to visualize OneNote class notebook is to use probably a real world analogy and think of it like a ring binder folder or a lever arch folder, and OneNote class notebook is that, like it's sat on a shelf. But when you open it up, you can, if you like to, start to divide up that ring binder folder by putting in section dividers, like the cardboard dividers we may have used when we were at school, with the little tabs popping out the side where you'd write the subject that was in that section, such as it could be the subjects that you teach, English, maths and science. It might be the sets that you teach if you're in a secondary school. So if you were a science teacher, it might be set 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3. But the sections help to start to organize the pieces of paper you're going to file in the ring binder, and then you can put pages into those sections, and those pages can be absolutely anything you like. They can be plain paper, they can be lined paper, or you could hole punch a piece of photocopied paper. And OneNote class notebook works in a similar way. OneNote class notebook has sections, and the sections are horizontally stacked there, very vertically stacked there. And then you can add in the pages, and the pages will file in the relevant section. The pages can be absolutely anything you like. So if I click back onto the welcome page, this is the default welcome page for OneNote, you've got a blank canvas. It's like an endless scrolling sheet of paper, and that's endless scrolling sheet of paper can have pretty much anything you like popped onto it. And that could be typed text, such as the text I have here. It could be that you insert a picture or paste a picture on. You could also add in animations. It will also take animations. It will also take videos, or if you're working in school, you can write on the board. The The drawing tools at the top in the ribbon are available there for you, that if you've got a touch-enabled device and you're able to ink directly into your touchscreen laptop, or if you're stood in front of a board, an interactive board in school, you could pick up a stylus regardless of the make of board, and that you could write directly onto OneNote class notebook. So it is useful for day-to-day face-to-face teaching, but it's also very useful for distance learning, because whatever you are inking or typing at your end, the pupils and students can see it at the other end, as long as you've got it in the correct section of OneNote class notebook. In addition to the features I've just said on the pages, you can also drop files onto the surface of the page so that students could open it up directly from the OneNote class notebook. And you can insert things such as audio feedback embedded into the page as well. So there's a huge scope about what you want to use that page for. And depending on the learning needs of the pupils you're working with or the age you're working with, it pretty much covers all different year groups. And you can use it for its very basic terms. So I've seen early years teachers and year one teachers just dropping a single picture on with a very short sentence, and that's fine. Or you can then take it up to the next level where you could have multiple animations on there, and you're teaching GCSE pupils about, I don't know, comparisons of an animal cell versus a plant cell, and it can pretty much stretch in any way you'd like. The sections themselves are pretty key to get to understand. So we'll have a quick look at the sections next, and then we'll go from there. So with the sections themselves, if we open up from the side here, we've got a collaboration space section. The collaboration space section in OneNote class notebook is exactly what it says. It's a space where pupils and other people can get together, or staff can work with pupils and students as well. I've decided to add in some other sections by pressing the add section button at the bottom, and it might be that I'm working in English. This is a primary school in this example, and it could be that we're looking at writing a book review. So I have a blank page here, and I then duplicate that page out. So I've got my pupils working in small groups, and they're writing a review as a table group about a book that they've read, and there might be 4 or 5 pupils, and they could all put their review in, and there's 5 or 6 pages in here, and each page has a review for a different book. So pupils can browse in between the pages, and they can see each other's reviews, and then you could use that in the lesson to inform the learning that's taking place. You could also use it to have all pupils working in one page. Now, you need to be brave, and it shouldn't scare you to see suddenly lots of activity going in on your page here. But usually, I would say, if we're looking at Egypt and Egyptian history, I might have around my virtual distance learning space, I've got different pupils there. It might be the 30 pupils I've had in my class, and I would probably pre-fill here the names of the pupils I want to focus on each element of Egyptian history. So it could be housing, food, culture, religion, and so forth. And then they work for a set period of time independently on their device, and you'll be able to see what's going on because the work will be appearing here before you, whether they're pasting pictures in or they're typing some text in here. But also all the other pupils will be able to see that picture building up, and a bit like the individual pages for the book review, it's suddenly coming up there. Now, the concept of collaboration space and working together is really useful if you want to get that collaborative work happening. Now, also, as well as in distance learning scenarios, you can use that face-to-face. So I worked with a number of schools where they've embedded using Teams, and they've got the luxury maybe of one-to-one devices or a high proportion of devices per school. And they would then go and they would have devices out on a fairly regular basis. But even schools that only have a set of laptops in a trolley, and they've got it to share between a subject in a department in a secondary or in a primary school, you could say, well, we're going to focus on working in this particular subject and using Teams, and the work was stored in OneNote class notebook that particular week. But it may be that, look, collaboration just isn't going to suit the activity that you want today. So you want something where you have a bit more control as a teacher. Well, another section in OneNote Class Notebook is the content library. And in the content library, I've also created some more sections. And in the content library, it might be that in English, I've prepared, this is primary school, a SPAG activity where we're going to look in year 6 at punctuation in grammar and so forth. I've made a worksheet of activity. I want the pupils to get stuck into it, but I don't want them to destroy or overwrite the original copy and then for all to be working in the same single version. So what I've got in here is a copy on one single page, and it's sat in my English section, but instead of them being able to edit the original and all being in the same place, with Content Library, I've got full control as a teacher. I could delete that page, I could add to that page, modify it, I could do what I like with it, but the pupils only get a read-only version. And it's a bit like having a pile of photocopied paper. They would come and take a copy off. They might use that as their activity for part of the lesson or for the whole lesson, depending on how much there is on the page. Well, the same concept works here in OneNote Class Notebook. They can, if they're old enough, be independent in taking a copy, a bit like they're taking a digital sheet of paper. So they can't do anything with the original, and they'd be told they couldn't. And I'm in as a teacher view at the moment. But what they could do is they could right-click, and they could go to the moving copy button. They wouldn't see move. I see that because I'm in as a teacher, but they would see copy. They would all see that only their folder in OneNote Class Notebook, because each pupil gets a folder. And if I was Henry, I would open up my folder, and because this is English, I would click on English, and then I would press copy, and it would take a digital copy, like lifting one off of a pile of paper, and it would place it into my folder if I was Henry down here. And then in my English folder, I would have my SPAG homework if I'd just taken a copy, and it would appear over here. Another good reason why you would use OneNote Class Notebook, particularly for distance learning, is you haven't got a set of books that you can continually hand out during the day digitally, and it's really hard to get to the work that the pupils are completing. But if they've got sections in here for the different subjects you're teaching, what you can do as a teacher is you can browse between the pages they've got in each of these sections, and if you're doing some work in maths or you're then going on to do some work in English, you can dip in and out. You can do that in real time during the lesson as well. So it's a bit like being able to walk around the classroom and visit individual pupils or table groups, however you would normally work, but you could do that in a digital world by walking around as well. The final section before I take the first set of questions is the teachers only section. I see that because I'm logged in this demo version here as a teacher. And what you can do in the teachers only section is you can build resources in private before showing them to the pupils, and them not having any awareness whatsoever you're preparing a resource in private. So here we are preparing something about the Chronicles of Narnia. I've built my page. It's got my activities in there about finding similes and metaphors and personification. They have already had some prior learning on that, and they could then have a copy of that placed into Teachers Only or the content library, or I can distribute a copy to them. So when we come back from the first set of questions, I will show you how to distribute pages. So if you're working with Key Stage 1, early years, or sometimes special needs pupils as well, you might need to just get that out to them rather than them right-clicking and taking a copy independently. Well, that's fine. You can do that, and OneNote Class Notebook will allow you to do that in a distance learning manner, so you don't have to be with them. You could do that prior to the lesson, or you can do that during the lesson. It's quite quick and easy to do. I'm just going to pop over and take a few of the questions that have been put into the chat. So I can see that Mrs. Batten, you've asked, do you have a video, please? Are you able to elaborate a bit more about that as to what sort of video you're looking for? And I'll pick that one back up in the chat in a minute. And I've got Mrs. Street, and you can say, how do you set children work, which children are assigned in that collaboration space? So in that collaboration space, it's open to every single pupil that's in your class team. There's no way to limit the pupils that get access to that resource in the collaboration space. It's just there for all to use if they wish to. And that's sometimes why assigning every pupil to a small group and then giving small groups individual pages are better. And occasionally you might say, look, we really want to see this progress in learning. We want to see the picture building, so we'll have them all in a single document. We haven't got a way of limiting that audience, but when I show you how to distribute in a moment, you will see how possibly you can use smaller groups there. There's a way to do it through that way. Okay, good. I've got some physical. Video recording of myself. Yes, I am at the moment recording it. So at the end of the session, the recording will get uploaded by our marketing team to the events page on the Turn It On website, which is www.turniton.co.uk/events. And there's a dedicated page on there which links to our YouTube channel where you can watch back this session and any other of the bite-sized sessions, whether you're able to attend or not. Got another question in there from Wendy. How are the children's folders created, e.g. English? I can show you that in a minute when I go back. I've got another question about a video of us teaching a lesson and give to pupils. Okay, so recording videos of you doing lessons we're going to cover in another session. So we've got several of these bite-sized sessions, and in one of the future sessions we are going to look at how to record videos of you delivering the lesson and then how to add them into the channels. We also covered that in the last session, bite-sized session from Monday, which is available on that same YouTube channel. And then now is talking about how you add videos into posts in Teams. So if you missed that bite-sized session from Monday, please go back and watch that on our video channel, and that's exactly where you can pick that up. But we'll also be touching upon that again in one of the future sessions. Can you add a PowerPoint? Yes, you can add a PowerPoint. I'll show you how to add different files in just a bit. Right, I'm going to jump back across to the actual live session here. And if I was in teachers only, and let's say I went to science, and in science, we want the pupils at home to take a toy car at home because we are focusing on distance learning today. And we want them to start conducting a scientific inquiry into streamlining vehicles. So we might be looking at friction forces between the tires a little bit, but we're mainly looking at aerodynamics of body shapes, what makes a streamlined shape and allows a vehicle to travel faster. So it is science inquiry about that. I've made a very open inquiry sheet here, and we might be then fostering that around things like dependent variables, independent variables, what's our control variables, and explaining, and that's absolutely fine, and that will come out through me still teaching. And you may be teaching this through a pre-recorded video and showing pupils a video of what you're doing in here, but you may also be doing this through a live lesson. And it's easier to achieve on a live lesson, but we accept very much that there are reasons why some schools choose not to do live lessons, so you could pre-record you doing this. You could also do audio only if you don't want to be on video and you want to limit the chance of anything being seen. But once I have my resource here and I want to get it out, OneNote Class Notebook has a dedicated tab which has additional tools on it. The other tabs do as well, but this is a specific tab available only in OneNote Class Notebook, which allows you to distribute pages. So I'm currently on a page here in my science section. Now, somebody asked me in the chat there, how do you make an additional section? You go down to the bottom here, you press add section, you title up your section, you press OK, and then it would appear in this list here. And if you ever want to edit any of your sections, you right click over them, you can delete them, you can rename them, you can also choose the colors. So if you are somebody who likes the old national curriculum, I think someone asked me to do this previously, and have science is orange and maths is blue and so forth, you can section them up. And there you can also add new pages in your section, or once you've got your section selected, you can add a new page by pressing the add page button at the bottom there. So that's how you get sections and pages in. You can pick them up and drag and drop them around as well if you want to reorder these sections. It's pretty much an open book. The page distribution I will come back to, but I might as well finish the other bit about sections. At the beginning, when I showed you the demo version of how to create a OneNote Class Notebook from the Creation Wizard, when you choose those sections, such as getting rid of handouts and class quizzes that Microsoft give you by default, and here I chose math, science and English and a homework folder for my primary example. Once I chose those titles, it not only created a folder for each of the pupils, the 30 pupils I would have in my class, it creates these section names automatically. If you fail to choose an additional section at the beginning, you have to manually go through and add in that section in every single pupil one by one. It's time consuming, which is why you just want to think about that startup wizard before you run it. When you come back to distributing your page, make sure you've got your page selected. Go up to the distribution page tool. You can select various ways of distribution, but because today is a bite-sized session and we're introducing you to this, you could distribute by a group. And I know there was a question in the chat about group distribution, and this might be how you overcome that collaboration space element. When you click group distribution, out from the side menu here will come a group distribution tab when it loads up. And in here, I've got lots of different groups that I've created. You make the groups, and the groups themselves, I'd always advise creating a whole class group, because if you want to give out a resource to the whole class, it saves you having to go and send it individually to each pupil. To do that, you would go to the add new group button. You can then, if you've already got a whole class group, you can hit the edit button. You can always rename a class, and you can tick and untick pupils that are in that class. But if it's the whole class, you're probably going to have all 30-ish pupils that you teach, or students if you're in a secondary school. You save that up, and then you press the arrow in the top left hand corner, and that's your whole class group locked together. You could also create other groups for teaching purposes. So instead of using collaboration space, if you didn't want a whole class activity, I might have a group of pupils I'm working with for intervention reasons. So it could be my English set to intervention group, and in here I've called it that, but of course I can rename it. I can always add pupils in, drop them out as they no longer need to be in the intervention group. But if I need to distribute some work to them in a distance learning scenario, I would simply tick, well, I want everyone in my English set to, or in fact English we haven't got, let's say it's my science eco group. I go next, I choose that all of the pupils in the science eco group, I want this resource to this page to go into their science folder, and I press the distribute button at the bottom, and it flings out a digital copy and it ends up in their science folder. So that's a way to distribute resources to a small group, but you can also distribute resources to an individual if you wish. So on the distribution page option on the ribbon for OneNote Class Notebook, you choose individual distribution. You get a similar menu to the group distribution. It pops out from the right hand side, but here you would see all 30 pupils. I've got 4 in this example today. I might say, wow, it's a standard science lesson. We've already created the activity we're looking at for, we've already completed the activity we're looking at for forces. And Henry and Susanna have really stormed through the work that I set today. That learning is secure. I know they're working at mastery level. I'd like something to extend their learning. Well, that's fine. If I've got something prepared in the teachers only area and it's in my back pocket, I can throw it out to them during the lesson, even if I haven't got it with me and I'm working in a distance learning scenario. So they might post, as we looked at in the last bite-sized section, into the posts up here and say, hey, Mr. Long, I've already done all the work you set for science. Is there anything else you can give us? We've still got 15 minutes left of the lesson. Well, yes, we can. We can go to next. We choose the science folder of those 2 pupils. We click the distribute button. And then for me as a teacher, I would see a box pop up and it will say that it's distributing that piece of paper. It will tell you the percentage complete, and whether you're doing 10, 20, 40, 100, it's about the same amount of time. You get the tick to say when it's done. That's over the internet. It has distributed a digital page, the page that you were working on here. And then for Henry, what Henry would see if he went to his science section, not his homework section, let's click on his science section, he would see the science of race cars page, and then Henry could carry on working on in his section on the science of race cars extension activity. It wouldn't overwrite the original, it wouldn't destroy my copy in the teachers only section. It's in his area. I can dip in and out, but he could also ask me questions in the post section, as we were looking at last time, and that conversation can be ongoing, but at the same time they've still got some meaningful learning to be getting on with. So the distribution of page feature is really useful from a distance learning perspective to still get that work out to pupils even though you haven't got them with you. I'd also use it prior to a lesson, even if it's a face-to-face or a distance learning lesson, to drop pages into the individual folders of pupils so that when we start the lesson or they watch a video of me that's pre-recorded, they go to their folder in OneNote Class Notebook, they pick up the relevant page that I've referred to, and then they just get on with whatever's on the page, and then that's their learning for the day. OneNote Class Notebook probably doesn't suit homework that well, and there's assignments to use for that, and we've got a separate bite-sized webinar coming up in the future on assignments. So stick to using this for live lessons or normal lesson replacement activity for distance learning, but it gives you an ability to get your resources out. You can additionally distribute to a new section or a new group. So if you wanted to make a new section and send your page to a new section, so if it wasn't one of the sections that you'd had before, you can create a new section and force it into the pupils' folders, and then that will be there for them with the page inside of it. When you want to review the individual pupils' work, yes, you can browse in and out and go out here, but there's also a review student work option at the top. And when you click that, you might say, well, I'd like to go into the science folder, and in that science folder, I want to select the page I want to review, and you click that and you go to next. And then you can choose the pupils that will be in this list, and for you it would be 30, and you can go in and you can go through and you can review the pages that way. So it's two routes to getting to looking at the pupils' work, even though they aren't working in a paper book, and normally you might sit there with a pile of books in front of you and mark them. That's difficult to do. The other benefit from a distance learning perspective is that this work is available anytime from anywhere, as long as the pupil's connected to the internet. So if you did end up setting a homework in assignment, and that homework related to the class learning, at any point the pupil could go back to their folder in OneNote class notebook and they could reference the page that they've been working on during the day, and that could then inform and help them in completing their homework. So it's not like their book is stuck in school and they can't get to that resource, or they're not able to access you because it's outside of school hours and you do have your own life. So they could go back and read what was on the page, and that could be another support mechanism for them to be successful in completing things like homework or going back to revise something if they wish to. I'm going to pop back over and pick up a few more questions. How do you give feedback for individual pupils? I will come to that next, I promise you. And is there a way children can notify you when they have finished editing work? So when you have pupils working on their pages, I normally, for the purpose of just keeping me sane, I ask them just to pop something into a post and say, I've finished on my page, or if it's during a live lesson, I will just say, our hour of working on this, just like it might be in a real classroom, is over. We don't have any more time to spend on this. Or if I say I'm going to give them till the end of the morning, I'll say at the end of the morning, I'm literally going to mark. There isn't an easy way for them to notify on here like it is in assignments that they've turned a page in or anything, or they've returned it to you. It's just one of those things where you just need to set an expectation as a cutoff point where you're going to look at that work and you're going to mark that work. The other question about feedback, if I take a page in Henry's, if I was marking Henry's page, so I'm going to come in here. If you want a bit more space and you want to get rid of all the other clutter in Teams, there's a button at the top here with two arrows pointing out. That will expand the space that you've got. Now you can see that there's an audio recording button there that I've used before previously. Might just delete that one and get it out of the way. You can give feedback by clicking here. So great ideas. How could you streamline further? And then it's one of those on the page, and you might put you might put it in a different color, such as you mark with a different color at school. You might put your name at the top to show that it's the teacher comment on the page, but we can go one better than that. So in here, if you go to the insert tab, there's an audio recording button. So if you go to audio recording, it drops an audio button onto the surface of the page. Now, as a teacher, if I've got a pupil that would respond better to verbal feedback from me, I can start talking to my computer. I might need to, if I'm using the web browser version, allow it to access my microphone. If it's in the Teams app, it will just do that automatically. But then I can start talking into the record button that's taking place here. You can see that it's recording because I've just got the stop button left. So everything I've just been talking to you about will have recorded. And once I've given that feedback, what they've done really well, the even better ifs, and if I want to share something with them, I press stop. And when I press stop, that will then fix onto the surface of the page. And if you teach pupils to look for these audio recording buttons, they could go get written feedback. You could ink it in by using the drawing tools, or they can press play on the audio recording and they can listen to your voice as a teacher of you giving audio feedback, and then you have to improve it further still. If you know that access to writing and literacy is going to be an issue, you can do it that way, and then that overcomes the problem of you trying to get them to read something and they can't read it. I see there's another question. Is there a way to stop it recording immediately as it's 3 minutes only? Yeah, if you hit that stop button, you can stop it, but the default at the moment is when you insert it onto the page, it will start recording straight away. There is no way to start it recording currently when you want it to record. It will just be at the point you hit that audio feedback button, it will instantly go live and it starts listening and recording. So you need to be ready when you go to the insert and you hit the audio button. It's ghosted at the moment because I'm on an audio recording. It will just start. So there's no way of doing it. For the people to play it back, they hit the play button at the top and then it will play back the audio recording that's in there. You can also insert many other things. There's a range of symbols. You can insert Microsoft Forms and embed them in here. You've got a range of stickers. And if this wasn't a bite-sized session, it was one of our full OneNote training sessions, I would show you many others of those tools. Some useful tools in here. So if I went back to the teachers only section and I went to maths, for instance, and then I was in here just writing a calculation on the page, and I've done this from inking in from a laptop if I've got a touch-enabled screen on my device, or I'm using a tablet, or I'm at a board. And what I can do is I could highlight that as a teacher, and there's lots of really powerful tools that are embedded in OneNote Class Notebook. One of them is the maths tool, and if I click the maths tool, it will interpret what I've written on screen. So I've got my 7 plus 3 minus 2 equals. I can fix it if it detects a operation or a number that I've written incorrectly, or I've written it correctly as far as I can see, but it detects it incorrectly. I can fix it by pressing the fix button. I can ink to maths, so I can have the inked version appear back on the page. But there's lots of different actions that you can do in here. So you could evaluate what the answer is, and I'll just show you an example of one. So the answer is 8. That's great, but doesn't really tell me a great deal other than I'm wrong or right. But what you could do is show the solution to the steps in the learning. Now, the solution to the steps in learning is useful, and I fully appreciate for all the teachers we've got here, there are many, many ways to go on a journey to come to an answer to a calculation in maths. And what this maths tool does is it picks the one that it thinks is best for the pupils, but it may mean that as a teacher you don't get asked another question in posts, or you haven't got another hands up in a Teams meeting, because the pupil can be here independently having a look at the solution, and it may give them the insight they need to find out how they got to the answer of 8. It may not, but there's a chance it will help. But for you, other really useful tools in the maths tool here is generate a practice quiz. So if you generate a practice quiz, you can say, well, based on the calculation I've highlighted, I'd like 10 more questions. You go to generate quiz, and what it will automatically do in real time, and I often do this in the middle of the lesson, it will generate 10 more questions based on the calculation that I had there. Pupils can automatically go and pick up that page if I've got it in the collaboration space, or also in the library, and then they press submit and it will auto mark for them. Some of you will have noticed here I'm getting a pop-up, and it shouldn't be that their literacy level or the words on the page is a barrier to another subject such as maths. So it's also over here, and you can click that and it will bring in something we're going to look at in another bite-sized session, is Microsoft accessibility tools. And in here you've got accessibility tools where it takes what's written on the page, and then you can press the play button as a pupil and it will read it to you. So if you press that play button,
solution step,
it will read it out, and then you've got lots of other tools in here. If you're visually impaired, you can make the text bigger or you can make it smaller. You can choose the font that it's displayed in. If a pale yellow background works better than the pale green background, you can have it formatted like it is on the page, the source formatting. You could also highlight things like nouns, verbs. If you want adjectives highlighted, you can have them labelled up as well. So it's got the V there for verbs and N for nouns. And then on this section here, if you've got pupils that have dyslexia or a different learning need, and there's just too much text on the page, you can bring in narrow line focus, and then as it reads, the line focus will shift down the page. But you could also enable things like picture dictionaries, so that when you turn off line focus, click a word, You will also get the pictorial version, if there's one available, of the word that's displayed on screen. And all of that works throughout Office 365, throughout Teams, so that they've got accessibility to the learning. And if you're preparing a resource, particularly in a distance learning scenario where it's really hard to get multiple copies out there, you could make the resource once, or you could create this resource once in the middle of the lesson, and then the pupil adapts it depending on their learning need in the middle of the session. So if I just come out of Maths tool, that's locked onto the page, and then anyone who's got that page shared with them will be able to get in there and use that for their purposes. You can see there another example of an audio recording. So those insert tools are really, really useful, and we haven't got time on this bite-sized session to explore all of them, but they are there for you. Somebody asked at the beginning of the session about inserting files. So if you wish to drop a file onto the surface of the page, you can go insert a file attached, or insert a file as a printout. You can print PDFs. So if you've got things like Twinkle resources in primary, or you've got a worksheet in maths in secondary, and it's come from a PDF for the resource you buy into, you can print the PDF onto the page here, and then you could use the drawing tools to ink over the top and annotate the page, or you can choose your file from your own library of files on your computer, from the server shares, or from your OneDrive, if that's where you store your files, and then they will end up sitting on the surface of the page, a bit like an audio recording, and the pupil can click them on the surface of the page and open them up from there. So then there's no need to go picking them up from posts or the file section. They're here on the page in OneNote class notebook. I'm going to pop back over and pick up a few more of the questions. So somebody's posted, Tiana from Turn It On is posted in one of the previous webinars. Thank you, Tiana, for popping that in there. Someone's had to leave. Another question. Did you highlight the drawn numbers? The drawn numbers, yes, you can highlight them, or you can. There's a highlighting tool, or you can just change the text number. There's lots of ways of doing that. So as far as the bite-sized session was concerned this afternoon, it was really getting you in, understanding the different sections, the collaboration space, the content library, the teachers only, and the power of having the pupil and student folders with their own sections, what you can do on a page, and the tools that you have at your disposal that you can use, such as the maths tool. And there's many, many more tools in there that we haven't even touched upon yet. And we do have longer training sessions on OneNote class notebook that we will be running in the future. But then that OneNote class notebook will start to build up for you, and it will provide a valuable learning resource, not only for you as a teacher, because you can reuse those pages, but also for those pupils that can reference them whenever they need to. So I'm going to throw it open now to any further questions, and then I will share the code with you this afternoon for the Microsoft Education Centre, so that you can redeem it to get your points and become a certified MIE. Someone's put in there that they're having some trouble clicking on the docs, so we have to see a screenshot of the PowerPoint slides. Could you unmute and just expand a bit further on that one for me? Or type into the chat.
Yeah, I can. The issue we have in school is that PowerPoint and Word documents, when we insert them like you suggested, children can't actually click and open them. So we have to actually physically go through the PowerPoint slides and screenshot and then insert them, which takes a long time.
Okay, so you went to there, chose a PowerPoint. You're saying when it's on the surface of the page that it's not opening for the person clicking it. Is that the issue?
Yeah, and I think also looking at the post from Miss Byrne, I think the same issue is with some Word documents as well.
Okay. I haven't experienced that yet, but I completely believe you that that's happening. That might be restrictions on the Office apps. It could be restrictions on the Office apps here in the app launcher, that they aren't loading, the web versions aren't picking up and detecting there's a file that opens. I have seen that discussed previously on a forum, although I haven't experienced it firsthand. And I fully appreciate the problem that would cause, because the people say, oh, wow, there's the file I need. I'd like to click it and get on with using it. If you were a Turn It On school, could you ask your Turn It On consultant to raise a support ticket for that and have a look at why that might be? And I don't mind if they do want to contact me and pick my brains and ask me more about it as well. I'd be happy to have a look at it, because if that's something that's cropping up for a few schools, it means that it's probably rearing its head in others that haven't even let me know.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Any other questions out there? Again, pop them in the chat or talk to me. If the wizard has been run, how can folders be set up for the whole class? If the wizard's been run, it's a matter of going down to, and that's why it's a pain, but you go down to here, you choose the individual pupil or student that you want, or you choose the content library collaboration space and you click add section, but you will have to go to every pupil individually if the wizard's already run to add the section in. At the moment, there is no way to rerun the wizard within a team that's already active and running with a OneNote class notebook live. The wizard will only run once. You get to do it when a new class team has been created, but you don't get to do it after that. So unfortunately, there's no way to bulk create more sections en masse. You have to just go through and add them, which is why I said at the beginning it's a good idea just to pause and think before you run that tool. Otherwise it can be a bit of a job just going through and adding those individual sections in afterwards. Is the view for pupils similar to the teacher view? The view for pupils, and that is a good question because I have been in a teacher view today, pupils wouldn't see the teachers only. That wouldn't appear for them. But they do see collaboration space, they see content library, and they also see their own name. So the view as far as the sections are concerned is exactly the same with the sections that they have access to, and what you see on a page, they see on a page. There's nothing hidden there. And they also have the same tools on the ribbon, with the exception that some of them won't work for them, such as the distribution of page. More than likely, again, this depends on how your Office 365 and your teams have been set up in your school, but usually the things like distributing pages are disabled for a pupil because you wouldn't want them distributing pages out to other pupils, but the option would be there in ghosted rather than not available at all. Video question from Stephanie. Is there any way to delete recording? Okay, this one is something we covered in Mondays. So just before Christmas, and it's really annoying, but it changed with the ways that video recordings worked. You used to record and the video recording went straight into Stream, and then you could control it from Stream. Stream, for those people who don't know what it is, it's an app in Office 365 where your video recordings can be stored. And you can build libraries of video recordings that can either be private to you or available for the whole school or just for staff and not for pupils. Now, when you record in a class team, as soon as you finish recording, it automatically posts that video into the post section of the class team, and it stays there for 20 days. And you can download a copy and you can upload it back to Stream, but the copy that's sat in posts as of the changes from the end of December cannot be deleted in any way. And there's nothing at the moment in the Microsoft roadmap that I've seen that's going to change that. So if you are recording a lesson, you need to be really sure if it's in the recording is in the class team in the generals tab, then you're happy for that to be posted there for 20 days, because once you press stop recording, there is no way now to remove that recording. And we've got a question in with Microsoft to ask if that's ever going to change, but as it currently stands, no, it's not. Can the video be deleted from SharePoint? At the moment, the videos that appear in posts in a class team, that one that appears for 20 days, we've also got the question is, where is it stored in SharePoint? Because we cannot locate where the video is stored. It doesn't go into Stream anymore. In the new version, it just appears in the post for you to download a copy and shift it to Stream. But the actual original copy, it probably is in a SharePoint somewhere, but my guess is it's a hidden SharePoint and you can't see it. Any other questions at all?